All right, we are now recording. Let's go back to our class. I apologize. And for our students who are watching, let me go back and fill you guys in, who are students who are going to be watching this video. Make sure that you go to week 4. Week 4 is where we are, week of March 22nd. You're going to check out your week 4 forum about Nestorianism, how did it form, and we're going to cover chapters 5 and 6 today, and your first quiz is chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can use your notes in your book. All right, everybody, let me transition, and I'm going to pull up our PowerPoint for today. As we transition, somebody tell me, let's talk a little bit about our discussion post from last week, and this will bring us in. Let's talk about lapsed Christians. Lapsed Christians. What did you say a lapsed Christian was? Let me get my book real quick. Anybody want to jump in there from your discussion last week?
Lapsed Christians are generally Christians who have given up on being persecuted and basically did things like whether us leave the church or pretend that they joined the Romans, but they really still did preach about God in private.
Because last week, thank you, that was Carl, right? Sometime I can't see who's talking. Okay, thank you, Carl. Because remember last week we talked, and it's like a everyday theme, right, with the early church. Remember, the early church is like a threat. They're a big threat to the Roman government. And remember, the Roman government is not necessarily following this new thing called Christianity. They're still worshiping the way that they used to worship, which was through their Roman gods and goddesses, and they were used to that type of system of religion. And so now you have these people who are starting to grow in numbers, and they're talking about, we're going to worship Christ and God, and we're building churches and things like that. And they were really upset at these new Christians. Now, I wanted to kind of bring this up because there were some people in the post. I don't want you to get confused with lapsed Christians were people who would basically trying to save their lives, right? They walked away. They were trying to save their lives because they could be killed, right? Because of what they believed. And I believe some of you lifted up Cornelius. I think it was Bishop Cornelius. It's on page 27. When he was elected Pope, he served for 2 years before his death. Cornelius was faced with the problem of what to do with these people who were lapsed. And so he was trying to figure out who was lapsed, how do we get them back, and what to do with them. And also, I think it was Cornelius, Bishop Cornelius, he also tried to adopt some kind of way to get these lapsed people back into the church. So I don't want you to confuse lapsed Christians of the early church with like a term like people who walked away or backsliding. Those people walk away because they just don't want to do it. These people, the lapsed Christians, it was, I'm trying to save my life, right? Or maybe they were trying to save their kids, their wives, their moms, their dads. You know, what a difficult decision. And we don't want to, say they were bad or whatever, right? Because they were trying to save themselves. And then you had some people during that time, they were like, hey, I'm going to die for it. And they were called martyrs as well. So a lot of difficult decisions that these early Christians had to make. All right. So let's jump on to chapter 5 and 6. Got my book open here. Chapter 5 and 6, we're going to start talking about how the church is now starting to move a little bit and expand. Somebody give me, somebody open your microphone and let me know if you can see my PowerPoint that says chapters 5 and 6.
I see it.
Yes. Okay. I've learned my lesson. I've got to make sure that I'm not moving ahead. I was doing all this stuff last week. Y'all couldn't see nothing. All right. All right. In chapter 5, if you're following with me, I'm on page 40 and 41. Now you're going to notice that there are two churches forming. You got the East and the West. So just remember that. You got the East and the West. Once again, it's kind of like a pickup. Remember I said from last week, you have ups and downs. You know, they're doing good, and then they're doing bad. And then so-and-so's fighting, and then we have a time of peace, you know. So anyway, the Roman Empire had divided. Once again, we got conflicts. And what were the conflicts due to? Religion. Hey, I want to do it this way. No, we're not doing it that way. You're wrong. No, I'm not wrong. So, well, we're going to just split, right? So the East rule from Constantinople. They rule in that area. That's modern day Turkey. And the Eastern Empire, they were, you know, it was seen as they were relatively stable. So Rome, we're talking about the Roman area. So it's also you want to make sure that you kind of look at a map and kind of see where these people are. All right, I'm advancing the slide. There are different views of Mary and Mary, Jesus's mother, Mary. That's who we're referring to. So in the East and the West, we have different views of Mary. Okay, so what were those views? Some saw Mary as a bearer of God. What we mean bearer, like a carrier, birther of God. And this means that Mother Mary carried Jesus, you know, in her womb, who was considered God and considered divine. But there were others who saw Mary as a carrier of a really nice man, right? Not necessarily God. And so Nestorius, so you might want to put a little underline right there, and I'm on page 42 if you're following along with me. Nestorius was an individual church leader who pushed this belief. So that'll give you a little asterisk to look at that. Nestorius pushed this belief that Mary carried Jesus, and they believed Jesus was a human, but not necessarily divine, right? So you see, I want you to start seeing, we talked, I think last week, that the church is going to continually, in history, and even now today, over time, the church is going to continue to have different views and perspectives. Some of the views will take off faster than others. And some people will say, no, I'm not going for that. And other people will say, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And when those views push against somebody else's views, you start to get splits in the church because they're like, I'm not going for that. God is divine. Jesus is divine, right? And they're like, nope, not going with that. And then you'll see how these different splits affect the church. Okay, so anyway, I want you to see that there were different views of Jesus's mother, Mary, and different views of Jesus himself as being divine. And then another group says, well, not necessarily divine, but a really nice human man. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about how the church is forming, how the church is forming their perspectives about Jesus. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit here about two individuals, Cyril and Nestorius. And so Nestorianism implied that there was a divide between the human and divine natures of Christ. So Nestorianism, giving you a little bit of tips for your post. Nestorianism said that maybe Jesus was more human than divine. That's what they say. And so Cyril and Nestorius, if you're following with me, I'm on page 44, they had a big clash, and they just weren't agreeing with each other. And so you get to, they kind of got into this big fight. If you're on the bottom of page 44, let me go there real quick. If you have your book, I'm on the bottom of 44. And Cyril and Nestorius, they have this big open discussion. Nestorianism implied that there was a clear divide between the human and divine natures of Christ, to the extent that its critics charged it with doing away with the divine nature altogether. So this helping you a little bit with your polls this week. The perceived implication of Nestorianism theology was that Jesus was too human to allow for the reconciliation with the divine that is so important for Christian thought and practice. So here you have these groups of people. They're saying, well, maybe he was a really good man, but he was more of a man. And then you got this other group that says, no, we don't agree with you. Jesus was God. Okay. So then I want you to understand that throughout history, you'll keep getting these councils. So a council is basically a group of church leaders, at that time, group men, but at that time, group of church leaders, and they get together and then they hash it out and say, what are we going to believe? Well, the Council of Chalcedon rejected both of these men. Well, let me go back, and I know I'm probably saying this name wrong. Eutyches, and I know I'm saying that wrong, said that there was only one divine nature of Christ, right? And so they put both of them out. They said, no, that's not right. We're going to rebuke, both of you and what you think. But they did agree that the divine nature of Christ and the human are fused in one, all part of one being. And I hope that didn't confuse you too much, but I want you to remember a couple of things here. Over time, the church is going to continue, over history, you're going to continue to see these councils. You're going to continue to see groups having different ideas. You're going to continue to see the church throughout history and even today sit down and try to figure out, all right, what do we believe? Is that right? Is that wrong? What do we believe about this thing? All right, let's go down to this particular word, and I'm at the top of page 45 if you're following along with me in your book, page 45. Monophysites. And monophysitism, that's a long word, isn't it? This is a position that believes that Christ, if you see Christological, that means Christ. And this position said that after the union of the divine and the human in the historical incarnation, Jesus Christ as the incarnation or the manifestation of the eternal Son or Word of God had only a single nature, which was either divine or a synthesis of divine and human. Whoa, that's a lot. What in the world? Let's back that up. So if you look at the top of page 45, once again, if you're in the theological class with me, this is a bit of theology. So people are still trying to figure out, all right, so this whole thing of Christ, God's Son, what are we going to believe about him? Okay, so monophysitism, and I know I'm probably messing that word up, I'm sorry. This particular thought about Jesus Christ said Jesus had only one nature, And this nature was either divine, like God, or a combination of divine and human characteristics. So monophysites are still trying to figure out, in history, who was Jesus? And this, when Jesus came to earth and was walking around and all this stuff, they're trying to figure out, was this either all God walking on earth or a combination of God and human? So let's pause real quick. I do want you to see this, the picture that I put on the right. You know, Miss Barry, you know this picture I put on the right of the screen, and I purposely picked this picture because Jesus looks like what in this picture? Does Jesus look European?
No.
No, Jesus does not look European in this picture. And I purposely picked that picture, y'all know me, because of the area. You always make sure you go back to your geography. And I think we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago when people, if you ask any artist to paint a picture of something, they're going to paint it in their mind's eye. They're going to paint it
What they look like.
of what they look like, right? If you saw all light people, then that's what you paint pictures of. If a little kid paints a picture of what they think the tree look like, they're going to probably paint the picture of what the tree looks like based on the tree in their backyard, you know, because that's the type of trees they saw. If you ask me, you know, if you ask a kid, paint a picture of a museum, of a mansion, and they've never been in a mansion, well, they might just paint a picture of their house or something like that because they're not quite sure. So I just say all that to say, y'all know me. During the early church, they're trying to figure out who's who. And what do we believe? Okay, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit, and we're going to, excuse me, post a little discussion here. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit to chapter 6 on page 49. Page 49. Okay. So I'm at the bottom of page 49 if you're reading with me. So we see the church is beginning to move. Remember, once again, we have a split. And so we have an East and a West church. What location are we talking about? Rome. So we have this emperor or leader, Justinian. And Justinian the First, he did pretty good. And down at the bottom of page 49, it says he enjoyed much success in his efforts to restore the fortunes of Christianity. In 529, he closed the pagan philosophical schools in Athens, and he waged this big campaign against these people called the Monotonists. They were like a heretical group. Anybody know what that word heretic means? I think we talked about this last week. A heretic. So the heretic or heretics, I should say it like that. Heretics were people that were believing stuff that was contrary to what they were taught, or that was contrary to the teachings of the Bible. So just think about it. Justinian gets in, and let's see, we're around 529. So talking about dates, about 529. When he gets into leadership, he's like, I'm going to go against these crazy groups of people because we can't have that. If you're not believing what's, you know, in the teachings, you're confusing people. He also commissioned a lot of building projects. And I want you to look at this picture, including a major church called the Hagia Sophia. And I want you to look at this picture. Has anybody on online. Has anybody been to Rome? Been to that area?
Sadly,
Travel?
no.
Yeah, I know, but Carl, we're gonna make it over there.
Mm.
No. Okay, I was just wondering. In your travels, had anybody been over there? Hopefully, we're gonna be able to get out of this United States and do some international travel again. But it's so awesome to see that many of these buildings are still around. Now, of course, y'all, it's been majorly renovated and renovated and renovated over the years. But I want you to see this picture to the right. And this is the Hagia Sophia. Look at it. It's just so beautiful. So Justinian is one of those who say, okay, we're going to try to bring some peace to the Christians and restore them once again. Remember Justinian. Okay. And so tonight, not tonight, but today, we're going to talk about Gregory the Great and see if I can find the video for us. Pope Gregory the First, he was also known as Saint Gregory the Great. Now you get into this thing called popes. You ever heard of that word? Or title, should I say, popes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So a pope is a big leader in the Roman Catholic Church. And so we don't hear too much over in the United States, somebody called a pope. No. the Catholic Church does exist in the United States, but a pope or the pope is one who is a leader of the Roman Church. And so anyway, he was pope from I think that's about 590 to about 604. And he was famous, he is famous for instigating the first recorded large-scale mission from Rome to convert people in England to Christianity. So I want to just pause. Let's unpack that real quick today. Pope Gregory. So what do we know about Gregory, or also known as Gregory the Great? He's known for starting a mission, this large-scale mission from moving the church's teachings and sharing the church's teachings from Rome. Remember, that's our center area, to England. All right, let's just pause real quick. When we hear the word mission, what large-scale mission, what does that say to you?
It's gonna be happening in like a great, about a great amount of like areas. Yes, when it says large scale.
Mm-hmm. Covering a large area, yes.
Missionary work.
Missionary work.
All the convert. What did the Anglo-Saxons worship at that time? Were they worshiping various gods or what?
Good. So at that time, it was more pagan worship. So it was not Christianity, Ramona. It was more so local gods, things of that sort. It could have been a form of Christianity. Excuse me, my eyes are itching. But it was not the formal Christianity that Rome was bringing. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I'm sorry, another question.
Keep going.
Now, when I look at this from Rome, are we talking about Catholicism at this point, or is it later that we have the Catholic Church established, and then we have the other churches established? When I saw the video that the brother did, it was great for history, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought about how the Catholic Church, and then you have well, I knew about the Protestant, the Reformation, and I didn't know the detail that he gave, but I was aware of that. But now I'm wondering, so everybody was doing paganism, and his goal was to set out to convert them to whatever this form of Christianity. Which
there you go.
Okay.
I like that. I want everybody to listen to Ramona's question, her statement. She said, "Is this the Catholicism that we kind of know today?" Not quite yet, but Ramona, it's on the way. It's almost like, should I say, it's on the way coming, because you know what I'm saying? Because you can start seeing the splits coming. You can start seeing, we're going to believe this over here and we're going to do this over here. You can really start to see, especially when we talked about, I think it was
kind of almost like them denominations and stuff.
Well, I
they got
you.
Their own separate beliefs about the same, like, religion and stuff.
Right. So they're exercising their faith different ways.
This is like Beta and VHS tapes. VHS was not the best tape, but it won out. So
yeah.
That's what. Yeah. Is that what this is? People are still struggling with which is the right way to go. What's the proper thing to do?
Right.
This is the process. We got enough 100 years behind us to see the process. Don't see it when you're going through it, but people after you can see what others struggle with to get to what you're doing today. Okay, I got it.
Exactly. And I try to stay away from saying if so and so was right or wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because they will worship in a different way, because that's what they knew. But I want you to see in this part in history, we're birthing the division of now Christianity and Catholicism is starting to come through. And people are saying, well, I want to do it like this. And I want to, if you go back to slide 3, when we talked about Mary, let me go back real quick. Can everybody see that I changed my slide to Mary?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, how do I say this? At this time, and we're talking about the 500s, we're really starting to see a split, and they don't even know it's a split probably, because Catholicism, really Catholicism and Christianity will look at Mary as being a bearer of God. But in Catholicism, it's a little bit different. They'll see Mary also as a saint, as one to be worshipped and one to be prayed to. But Christianity does not pray to Mary, if I'm making sense. So you're starting to see the seeds being planted of different ideas, even right here, of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And that's going to continue to carry on. And some folks are like, no, this is what we're going to believe. And so the Catholic Church worships, saints, or should I say, I don't want to say worship, or praise to saints and things like that. And they hold them in very high esteem. But the Christian Church is more so focused over history, with folk putting their focus on the God and the Trinity, and making sure that they understand and worship God and not necessarily the saints. Okay. Let's talk about this thing as we pause, mission. mission. You're going to see over history that there's going to be several missions. And as Ramona said, and I think it was Brian, said the purpose of the mission is to move their thought into a different, Christian thought into a different area or a different continent or a different country, and to expand it and say, hey, you know, this is what we believe. Would you like to believe the same thing, and so on and so forth, you know, and to share it with them. But sometimes the problems come when the missions or the missionaries come into a particular area, and watch this, they beat up the people, and I don't mean beat up physically, I shouldn't say that, but look down upon the people because they were worshiped in a different way. And so, and that can be problematic. Okay, that can be problematic, especially as we start to talk about how it moves into, and I'm jumping thousands of years ahead of how missions or missionaries move into the African continent. Okay, so I jumped 1,000 years. Okay. Gregory the Great is also known for writing a book called Pastoral Care. And if I'm on page 52, 51 and 52, but he wrote this book called Pastoral Care, and it helped to explain what church leaders should do. Because at this particular point, guess what? They didn't really know. I'm on the top of page 52. Okay. And so he tried to do that to help them kind of gain some order on what their job description was. I know your book has a lot. I want to focus real quick here before we leave on, remember we talked about missions. I'm on page 52 and 53, and we talked about Ethiopia on page 52. Christianity starts to move into Ethiopia. So if you're on the top of page 52 and going on to page 53, anybody over there? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. If
Yes.
you're there. Okay, if you're there, I just want to highlight this real quick, y'all. It says, after the Council of Chalcedon in 451, Christianity in Ethiopia became firmly identified with, here goes that big long word, monophysitism, under the influence of Syrian and Egyptian missionary refugees. So once again, you have people moving from one country to the next. And when people move, they take with them their culture. They take with them their religion or their faith. By the start of the 6th century, okay, let me scoot down here. Ethiopia could be described as a thoroughly Christian country. Ethiopia didn't stay that way, didn't stay all Christian. But I just wanted you to see that real quick. I was at the top of page 53, how when people move from place to place, they take their religion with them. And so even as you start, excuse me, y'all, around 500, the early 500s, you start to see that Christianity is now beginning to thrive in Ethiopia. And let me stop sharing real quick. And you all know from having classes with me, you know where Ethiopia is. Where's Ethiopia?
In the African continent, East Africa.
Right. And so even as we fast forward even to today, Ethiopia does have Christianity, but it's not just Christianity. It's also individuals are following Islam as well as other religions in the country of Ethiopia. I wanted to highlight Gregory the Great. Anybody have any questions real quick as I pull this up?
Mm.
Is he considered the great because of the fact that he attempted to establish something for the leaders of the church all to follow? That's why he's considered the great. Did I get that right?
You're right.
Okay.
You're right. And actually, we're gonna go here real quick. This is a real short video.
And
And we're gonna
at this time, the church is still considered the church, and we don't have the separation of Catholicism yet.
That's-
Okay, thanks.
That's right. But remember, Ramona is on the way coming. Can you see it?
Yeah, you can see it. I can even see that Protestant
in 540.
Yes.
but it's about to start.
Yes. And so everybody pay attention to what Ramona is saying. She's saying, well, wait a minute. Do we have this Catholic Church, Christian Church thing yet? Not just yet. They're not necessarily calling themselves Catholic, Christian, whatever. So it's Christianity right now. And remember, they had to fight early on to be called that, because remember, they were getting killed and all of this because they were following Christ. But you're starting to see, even in the 500s, 600s, that we got two different groups over here. Remember that, y'all. We got the East and the West. So Rome has split. So you got the East and the West Church, and they're doing things differently, and they're going to continue to have these issues until we see that big split in the Protestant Reformation. Okay, so I like how Ramona always gives us good points here. She said, what is up with Gregory? And she said, why was he considered so great? And you kind of just gave us the title to, to the video that we're going to pull up real quick. All right. What was so great about Gregory the Great?
46, the Ostrogoths came calling in what remained of Rome. Now, these Goths showed none of the restraint of the Visigoths, Huns, or Vandals. They plundered the city, then starved its inhabitants. By the time they were finished, the last lingering remnants of Roman civilization, things like safe travel, communications, and trade, had all disappeared. The ironic thing is that neither the Romans nor the invading barbarians actually wanted disorder. It didn't serve anybody's purposes. Order needed to be restored. Somebody needed to fill the power vacuum to take the place of the imperial government. Another great leader was needed, a leader named Gregory the Great. Born into a wealthy Roman family, Gregory was a smart, well-educated man who made a name for himself in the civil sphere. At one point, he was even prefect of Rome, which is kind of like being a mayor. Eventually, though, he gave up his worldly success, entered religious life, and turned his home into a monastery. He built more monasteries, was later ordained a deacon, and then served as a church diplomat. When Pope Pelagius II died in 590, the church came calling. Gregory became pope and reigned as successor to Peter for 14 years. In addition to restoring civil order through the institution of the church, Gregory showed his greatness by reforming the clergy and ending liturgical abuses. And the effects of his work are still being felt today. For example, he was the initial promoter of Gregorian chant, which bears his name. Now a doctor of the church, Gregory the Great's legacy includes a number of sermons and letters, a biography of St. Benedict, and a rule for pastors to help guide bishops in their role as shepherds of the flock. And like Leo before him, he was passionate about preserving unity and maintaining order in the church. In his Epistle 17, Gregory stated that we all together need to follow the guidelines of our holy fathers, doing nothing adversarial. But unanimous in every pious aim, we must, with the Lord's help, obey the holy and apostolic constitutions. Like other good fathers, the fathers of the church wanted to keep their family from tearing itself apart. They obviously weren't afraid to deal with problems, but they rightly valued the unity of the church. They sought to fulfill the prayer of Christ to his Father in the Gospel of John, that we may all be one.
All right, let's come back together. Okay, so we ended there talking about Gregory the Great. What was so great? So we're learning that, you know, here we have a church leader who was concerned about order, concerned about teaching, laying down some things for people and leaders to come. So that's just a little snippet. And I'm also going to I'll post that video so you guys can watch it a little bit later if you desire. Any questions, any comments? I'm going to be coming through and grading your assignments for, what did we have last week? The video. Did you guys learn anything from that video?
This video.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't being clear, Brian. Either our St. Gregory video, yeah, or your video assignment from last week.
Yeah. This song from last.
I learned that.
Kind of good.
Good. Somebody was saying something, I'm sorry.
No, I said I learned a handful of things as well.
Hey, Nicholas. Okay, good. Tell me one thing you learned was like, what?
About the writings, about how they stored the writings until like Jesus came back, like to like just have all his lessons and stuff that they taught him, and like eventually all their writings like basically made up to what we know as the Bible today. And I didn't know that.
So true. Good. Good, Nicholas. Anybody else want to chime in there?
I thought he went too fast myself.
Went too fast?
Yeah, he was kind of fast. I mean, he was at fast pace. All right, but you know, he said 15 minutes, so he did. But I was impressed that he did it in that amount of time. But you know, with the clarity and all, you know. But that was a little fast. That was a little fast to me.
It is a lot, isn't it, to condense? And I found that video, as opposed to giving you all a documentary that have been a couple hours long, and I was thinking the same thing. I said, "Ooh, he was able to put it into a." Not
What I did like is he broke it down and he said this is part, and this he had it into 5 parts, and he said and then this is the part, and he tells you the time frame, and I was happy for the pause button and
yes. Yes.
It took me an hour to get through his 15 minutes, but
Yes.
I was so intrigued because he did talk about the fact. He said, well, next we're going to talk about the various denominations. I went on and saw the next one.
Oh, very good.
Yes, I said, oh my gosh, because just him, because that's something I always wondered. How did we get to the part where we had all these different denominations and
Right.
and this is this, and I mean it's sort of like I had these snippets of what everybody was, because I knew about Calvinism, I knew about Lutherans, you know, I knew about Martin Luther, but I didn't know the reason they broke off and people followed them. So this was very good to know that reasoning, and in modern day language.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And you're not by yourself, Ramona and Lester. I had to pause it a few times and say, hold on, huh? And then go back. So I'm right on there with you.
It was good though. It was good.
All right. Okay. Anybody else before we leave out? What did I want to say to you all before we go? That's what happens when you don't write things down. I forget. Okay, so this week you have your quiz and your quiz and your forum on Nestorianism. Okay. And that will wrap us up for today.
Quick question.
Yes.
that was on the assignments list. It did seem like there was a spot where they showed two of the same assignment parts.
Okay, let's go back. Let's see what happened. Okay, Carl, can you see the class now?
Yes, it's
Okay.
it's like when under the assignments folder, not like when you go to the part for assessments and then under it assignments.
Okay. There may be Lester had a question and he was able to call me. And you said, Carl, it was what now?
Yeah, it looked like there was like two of the same.
It's yeah, don't worry about that because well, you're seeing my stuff, so don't pay attention to the numbers. But sometimes when the course is duplicated over from a previous semester, it will populate the assignment twice.
Oh, okay.
Now that we've started, no, you only do it one time. And now that we've started the course, if Miss Berry blows it out, I'm going to blow out your work. So I'm not going to touch it because I'm going to make more matters worse. So thank you. And I said, if I delete something, somebody's going to be mad at me because then your work's going to be gone. So I will clean it up at the end of the semester so I don't delete work. Okay. Thank you. So this week, right here on 4. Okay. All right, everybody. Don't want to hold you too long. We did pretty good today. And I look forward to seeing you all. What's next week? The 30th. All right. Okay, take care. Peace. Be safe. Be safe. Wear your mask.
Excuse me, what's the timeline on the quiz?
The time limit. Oh, that's a very good question. What's the time limit, y'all?
Yeah.
It is, I think there's about 2 hours on it.
Okay. Now I'm saying when. Okay, so when is it due? When is it?
Oh, everything will always be due on Sunday nights.
Okay. All right. Okay. Gotcha.
11:59.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right, everybody.
All right. See you next week, everybody. Be safe.
Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, Miss Berry.
Bye-bye. Take care.